call the meeting to order. We have all of the members here except for Tina Rupp. We have Casey who is on the screen. We'll start tonight with comments from the public, and we have a few members of the public here. So we'll start with people in the room. Adam, do you have anything you wish to say?
Well, I'll introduce myself. Adam Seafield, lifelong resident. Family's been here a million years. When this project first took root many years ago, I was a big proponent for it. Still am, and I found out by accident we were having a meeting tonight and made every best effort to get here. And I want to hear all about it. So I'm pro project.
And he's reliving his school days here.
Yes,
here
spent a lot of time here.
here in the building. And we'll go on. JT Dunn, do you have comments you'd like to make?
No, I'm just looking forward to making some progress.
Any other member of the public have comments? Hearing none, we'll continue to move on. I will start with introductions. Seeing how I'm speaking, I'll start. My name is Bruce Carlson. I am currently in town. I am chair of the Board of Finance, and I also had the opportunity to be a member of the committee, a 5-person committee that worked with the consultant Camoin Associates in doing the look over about a year's period at Mariner's Way and come up with a set of recommendations and the book that we have. Also had the opportunity to serve on the American Rescue Plan committee, and very delighted that we were able to put $250,000 of the ARPA money aside for catalyst projects, and we do have part of the resources that we have available to move something forward, whatever it is that we can recommend to the Board of Selectmen. Economic development experience. I've probably been involved in economic development for 40 years, serving 30 of those years in various capacities with state government and the University of Connecticut. Started my own business, so it's similar, and then ran a statewide technology council, which is really a chamber of commerce for technology companies around the state. And I left that, did some consulting, did some economic strategic plans for New London, for other places, and big projects and some small projects, and been able to focus on Altivic for the last 5 years. And it's been a lot of fun. Good.
Very good. My name is Doug McCracken. I'm a retired engineer on the electric power industry. I've also included a tour of duty through finance for a few years, so I'm familiar with the numbers. I'm currently the vice chair on the Saybrook Planning Commission. Been on the commission probably close to 10 years now. I'm also the Saybrook representative on the RiverCog, River Council of Governments planning group. And I've been involved in the sea level rise initiatives from the beginning, starting back in, I think 2014, right after Superstorm Sandy. Carl had a team, looked for a team of volunteers, and that's how I got involved in the planning commission. But I'm still very much engaged in the sea level rise initiative, so I'm looking forward to being part of this team.
Chris Rickson moved to town back in 2015. Conversation with Bruce last week. The reason I'm on this committee is I'm convinced this is the best thing I could do for this town. And again, using my talents and my skills, I spent 5 years in-house at the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. That guy was over at OPM. After that, I worked for developers for about 15 years. Actually went out and developed my own projects. I've been involved with taxable and tax-exempt bonds, tax credits, mixed use residential, single family and infill housing, which included the use of floating zones in Pawcatuck, Connecticut, to take an old industrial site and blended it into the residential neighborhood. So again, looking forward to forward.
Tracy Larson, I'm a business owner at 440 Boston Post Road. So I bought what was Rivers End Bait and Tackle building from Pat the Bait. And it's been about 2.5 years. We renovated during the winter, much to my children's dismay. That was their college break project helping us. And so we've been open since March of 23, I guess. And I was 13 years in Westbrook. And I could not be more excited about possibilities for Mariners Way, for Old Saybrook. You know, I don't bring any of the kind of expertise in planning or zoning or housing or any of that, but I've worked in the communities of Westbrook, Old Lyme, and Old Saybrook for, you know, I've been here 20 years and I've worked with people for 15. And so hopefully enthusiasm and, you know, I have a real stake in whatever happens. And I feel like this is such an opportunity to just change Old Saybrook for the better.
Tina, welcome. We're doing introductions,
thank
but
you.
I'll give you a chance to catch your
Okay,
breath. We'll go to Casey and then you can come back.
Great.
Casey?
You hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, my name is Casey Hand. I was a town planner for 15 years before I took some time off to raise my girls, which is why I'm home tonight. And I'm very disappointed I couldn't be there in person, because in person is a better meeting than than over Zoom, but Zoom is better than nothing. So I'm glad to be able to be here, but I apologize that I couldn't be there in person tonight. I'm on my own today. So if I turn off the screen, I'm still listening. It just means I had to address something briefly, and I'll come right back. But anyhow, so I was a town planner for 15 years. I worked first in Bristol and then in Wallingford. So different communities, but some areas of sort of interest or focus that I think are really applicable. I was very involved in housing and some housing committees throughout the state, and also at the local levels where I worked, and with a lot of mixed use development, promoting mixed use development. And since we've moved to Old Saybrook, we've been in Old Saybrook for 6 years, but I did kind of grow up, you know, spending summers and such down here, but now we're full time. And I've just been really looking for kind of how I could contribute and give back to the town. And I've just sort of zoomed in on Mariners Way as something that I think is such an sort of unutilized major opportunity for the town. I think it is sort of the biggest unutilized major opportunity for the town. So I am also I'm an alternate on the zoning commission, and I have been on the economic development commission for the last few years, although I'm stepping down to be able to participate in this committee. So I have had some background there, and I was also on the ARPA committee. And I think this particular funding that we chose as part of the ARPA distribution was, I think, just such an important contribution to start to be able to get some of this up and running. So, and also on EDC, we've talked a lot, I mean, years and years and years about, there's much history, but we've talked a lot about sort of opportunities for Mariners Way and what we could do to get something going here. So I think this is a really exciting opportunity. Thank you.
I'm so sorry that I missed everyone introducing themselves, and I'm a coach on one of the high school teams, and we had a little issue. It's like Murphy's Law. It's like, I could be there by 5:30, sure. So I have been full-time resident in Old Saybrook since 2011. And I've had a house here for several years before that. And I've been following along with Mariners Way for all these years. And for the last 4 years, I've been on the architectural review board. So just right here last night. And you know, I also feel like it's an underutilized area, Mariners Way, and it's just been fun to watch. And it's like so exciting to think that we can really change this road and the path and just make it this really exciting new place in our town to connect us with the river and everything. And you know, I feel like I get the gist of what's going on, like knowing zoning laws and everything, like being on the architectural review board. So I feel like I also have, you know, my own kind of ideas of what I think would be great just to contribute. My background is, I'm a very visual person. That's why the architectural review board is good for me. I was a photographer in New York for a long time, and I'm actually a realtor now. And so I kind of just know a lot about properties and all these things. It kind of all just merges together. And I've been raising 2 kids in this town. They're teenagers now, middle school, high school. So we've been really taking advantage of living in this really great town, and hope to see how I can help.
And although not formally a member of the team, but a person who is going to be very important to us and also has a lot of background, Jennifer.
So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the economic, development director. I think that's allergy problem.
Oh, yeah.
Then I have also worked with the ARPA Commission, and I was part of the group that worked on this study. So I've been through all the background with everybody, so it kind of feels like a full circle moment to be with you guys on this committee, and you know, I'll do whatever I can to support the vision. Obviously, being in the economic development department, you know, a vested interest, our commission in the success of this area and the growth and development. So if you have any questions or you need any information or support, you can contact me at any time.
Jennifer is great on the background of how we got here and all of that based on the work that's been done. So when we were initially got the email from Carl appointing us to the committee, we had the charge. And so I don't know if I can pull it up quickly, but I just think for the purposes of the public, we may want to just go through the charge just so that people know what it is that we're about. So what we are being asked to do is to take this study that was done on Mariners Way, economic revitalization, and take the recommendations from that study and work with business owners and property owners from Mariners Way to come up with economically viable projects. What can be done out there? How do we assist in making that happen? And so the areas that we need to identify are an overall redevelopment vision for Mariners Way. Any additional studies that need to take place, and we can talk a little bit about some of the studies that actually have happened even since this particular project was done. Any of the zoning or other regulatory changes that need to be made to advance the redevelopment vision, potential funding sources, and we can run through some of those funding sources this afternoon as well. Specific projects that the town would support, and also potential development partners for those projects. And then ultimately, whether or not the Mariners Way Redevelopment Committee should evolve into a redevelopment authority. And that's a statutory issue of the specific responsibilities of a redevelopment authority, and whether or not we stay in this ad hoc or whether we become more formal. So those are that's our charge. We're not given any specific timeline in which to accomplish it. So it doesn't have to be done by June, but I think we can work on it. But we can, I think it's great to get this started and to move it forward. Maybe between Jennifer and me, well, one thing I was hoping that Carl would be here for is because I have been focused on this, in this latest iteration. But Mariner's Way has been an issue, and noted, probably for over 10 years, maybe close to 15 years. Variety of different studies that have taken place. There have been, those studies, I think, had a lot of community input. There was, I think people felt momentum, and then ultimately they kind of drifted to the side. I can't tell you why that is because I wasn't involved. But I'm hoping that that is not going to be the case of what we're trying to do here. One thing that did come out of the work that was being done in the 2017, 18, 19 timeframe was the creation of a tax increment finance district for Mariners Way, or Mariners Way as a TIP district. And that has bearing on some ideas, because not only through the creation of that is there actually a relatively small funding flow happening right now because of the property tax increases that have happened since the district was created. But the more that gets done, the more property values to increase the property value, the property tax coming from that, the more goes into that pot. And so then that becomes something that can be used in order to kind of keep the momentum going. So there's a real great opportunity, I think, around being a TIF district. And it's, that is all on the website, what it means, what the area is. And it's, I think, something that's useful. I can pick it up with Jennifer's help of what happened with Camoin study. We went out in mid 2023 with a request. We had 3 or 4 different economic development consultants who provided bids to come in and work with us. A committee that involved Jennifer, first selectman, Matt, who was on the board of selectmen, Chris Costa, who was the planning director and zoning officer here, and I made the selection of Camoin. And then we worked very closely with them for a year. In that process, they held at least 2 that I can remember. Public meetings where anybody invited. They had a number of interviews, probably interviewed you, Tracy, and others. And were just to be able to gather information. And they came up with this report, which probably about spring of last year, about a year ago. And the good news is that almost everything that is in that report is still absolutely on target. And something that we could be pursuing. And what we need to do now is we need to take that report and take it the next step and figure out, there's a lot of recommendations. What do we want to set as priorities? As Chris mentioned, he and I had a conversation last week, and I think he's absolutely right on target. We need a vision. What do we want to do? What do we want it to look like? What kind of pieces do we want to have there? And that's done to us, for better or for worse. We get to have that opportunity. So looking forward to doing it. And then the last thing on this part of the agenda is the issue of resources. And I mentioned the TIP district. Another resource that's available to us is the Fine Federal. Moving into the Mariners Way area is they generate a think it's 3% of their gross revenue comes back to the town. And that can be used by statute for a variety of different purposes. And one of those purposes is to work on infrastructure within the area that the cannabis shop is located. So it is a potential resource. Like I say, there's other competing demands for that resource, but it is a resource. It is generating revenue on a monthly basis to the town at this point. Town has utilized it a little bit, I think, but has put most of it in an off-budget account for the purposes of whatever ideas we've come up with. I mentioned the Catalyst project that through the ARPA effort. And then after this study was done, one of the important pieces of the study is to begin to think of the walkability of Mariners Way, what can happen. And I know that Chris Costa reached out and did a road survey with a consultant. We'll need to invite her in because I haven't seen it. And Jennifer, I don't know whether you know much about that at this point.
I have not had a detailed review.
Okay, so one of the things that I think we'll need to do is to invite her in and to run through what that information is at the stage of the game.
So it's a state road.
Yes, Boston Post Road, Route 1. And so the state has a whole series of barriers, right, that it puts on. So I've done a lot of talking to try to get you to this place, but let's open it up. And Gina said she had some ideas that she'd like to do out there. I think it's important for us to just kind of put on the table what our interest is in Mariners Way, maybe some of our own interest in vision, and then we can begin to bring that down. And Casey,
So particularly, we pointed out the first few pages of this because one of the main points that we wanted Emily to address was that we wanted to have action items. We didn't want this to be a report that sits on the shelf. It has a lot of just information, but then what do you do? Because we kind of felt like past studies had maybe done that, given us a lot of useful information, but then where do you go from there? So just as sort of a starting place, especially for those of you who are less familiar with what we've done. I mean, Tracy's been in on a lot of our meetings, Bruce, obviously, all of them. This is a good way to sort of get your feet wet of some of the things that were recommended and why, just as a starting place. Because like I said, we wanted this to be a living, working document, not just a bunch of facts and figures.
something that would just like to throw on the table, Matt?
Well, I'll just throw a couple of things out. So my experiences, we're very good at generating reports. But it's hard to get things done. So I'm all about getting things done, it's about action. I also believe, it's great you're here, but I think we need to fully engage people on that stretch. I don't know if they're group meetings, individual meetings, but I think that's critical to get their support and buy-in, to a joint vision. You cannot, put it down their throat, and we don't want to go this way and they want to go that way. I was in management a long time. I used to tell people, it's not Burger King. You can't always have it your way. We do need to get a consensus direction and then just drive it to, action. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Bruce and I were talking about, Ms. Jennifer, kind of goes back to what you were talking about initiatives. What's the plan? And there's the 1 through 10 where, as we look at page 5, and there's the 7 ways of getting there. Um, Good friend of mine, good friend of Bruce's, Gary King, used to say, what's the problem you try to solve? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Right now, the problem we're trying to solve is in our heads. And it's in all our heads. We don't have anything other to go on than what's in our heads. So when I looked at this, to me, that master plan, coming up with what a master plan looks like, get those stakeholders involved, what this thing can look like. To me that's imperative. And that's something that becomes tangible. That becomes something that people can buy into. It's not just something that gets, that's terrific, goes up on the shelf. It's something that people go, I did that, I'm here. And I did a similar project in Mystic, Connecticut. And we went and just photographed it and brought everybody in. Cocktails might have helped, but it was friendly and the loudest person in the room was shocked because their piece of property was voted the worst piece of property in all of downtown Mystic. And so he basically said, okay, you guys, I'll listen to you. You guys know what you're doing. I want, and we're able to back him and his family off and allow the majority to come in. You know, we didn't dismiss him, but allow the majority to come in and create something that was something that could be done in part of the master plan, which included everything from one-way streets. It included signage. It included, all those other things that we talked about here. It talked about, and this was something that Bruce and I put up the other day, Jennifer. It was be great to have a map. It doesn't have to be as big as that, but it'd be great to have a map. So we're not leaping in our heads because this has got to be connected. This has got to be pedestrian friendly. I know we've got wetlands. I know we've got train tracks. I know there's a bunch of stuff over there. I don't plan on building a bridge over Ford dealership. There's got to be somewhere else we can get in and around to get ourselves safely onto Main Street and make that connection. Because right now, that's the biggest problem. Is Mariner's Way is over there. It's on the other side of this 154. And then one goes this way, and it's classic Connecticut. That's Hartford, 91, the river. Jeez, they never thought no one would, who would want to see the river? What a dumb idea. Well, that's why Mark Twain went there. It was because of the Connecticut River and the effect of the river. And every other place you go, it's access to that river. And it's businesses that are associated with what's going on with the river. So you get that, that type of master plan, that type of buy-in gets people excited. And I think the next piece of that is having this destination. That's the killer. That's the destination appeal is the one thing, but I'm talking about a major project, something that really, picks off the space. And that can be a myriad of things, be a combination of things. But I think it's got to be an active thing that's going to draw people in. We're going to be able to walk from town, walk from the train station, and it's another reason to come into the downtown.
Two thoughts about what you're saying. So when my husband and I purchased the property that we purchased, so part of the reason I could afford that property was because it was in Mariner's Way, right? I mean, let's be clear. But the draw to me was that I was next door to Wild Birds, who maintains her property beautifully. Across from Waterview Landscaping, they maintain their property beautifully. The gas station, God bless them, they redid that. They've redone the other one recently. So, my business is very much a destination. I draw customers from, I have people who drive as far as Pennsylvania for a day visit. So most people don't understand that about my business, but I also have a lot of customers from Connecticut. So people will find me, but what I really want to see is all this walkability and this looking like an actual beautiful area where people want to spend time. so that other businesses, which are not necessarily gonna pull their people from, out of Connecticut or can have that beautiful space for people to come. I almost think of Niantic, and how, they've got some apartments there now, got businesses on the ground floor. And so of course, I'm now terribly curious to hear about some of the, residential stuff you've done. But my second thought, and I want to be really upfront about this, is not coming from background of experience with this, is do we expect businesses, I know we want buy-in, but I worry there will be a fear that businesses are going to be expected to put out a lot of money to conform to something. And I think that, I can only speak for myself. I'm 2 years into a 20-year mortgage. And, we've been busting butt to get that place fixed up. So, but I certainly, it would be challenging if someone were to say to me, oh, well, you need to redo your whole driveway now. You need to redo your whole thing now. You need to come up with $20,000. And I'd be like, well, you better go to Essex Savings Bank because they took the risk on me already. I don't know where that $20,000 is. So how does that buy-in work? And I think we need to be upfront about that. I don't know the answer to that question, but how does that work? Because we don't want to drive out existing businesses. But we do want things that are there to improve. It's to continually improve or to start to improve.
Well, again, just a quick example
Yeah,
was the money that came in to do the sidewalks. And now the sidewalks that are brand new, going out past high school, out towards, how far are they going now?
They're gonna go all the way down this.
So all the way there, that was, nobody, you did that.
please. I have an employee, I will also say, I have an employee who could not afford to work for me if she did not take the train.
Yep.
And she rides that train back and forth 5 days a week. And Jennifer and I have had this conversation, she crosses, and in the winter, I did lose my cool a little bit because, she could have easily gotten killed trying to cross there because what little of a crosswalk exists, there's no lines, there's just a little button you press and you wait and hope the cars are paying attention, was iced in. So the state really also has, I have no idea how it works with the state, but
You will learn.
I'm happy to learn, I'm excited to learn.
So one of the things you bring up, and being a business owner out there, my understanding from the Camoin work is that there were some efforts in bringing property owners and business owners together for discussions. Were you involved in those discussions?
I was, yeah.
And so do you think it would be wise or at some point for us to kind of reinvigorate that to bring that group or whoever wants to participate in that group as kind of an advisory group to us so there is a constant communication and it's not somebody's imposing something, but more there's people are developing it together.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I know Jessica next door to me at Wild Birds would be very, interested, and I don't know the folks who own, the John Deere, but I know Pam and Bill Atwood at the car dealership. The admin from one of you came to the meetings. JT was at some of the meetings. Fine Cuddle was at some of the meetings. And I think, yeah, you bring them in, those who want to talk about it. And then I guess one other thing, sorry, there's a lot going through my mind right now, but is when Jennifer and I were talking a couple of months ago, is that my understanding is that some of these brownfield sites. Some of these have been sold now for the bridge project. And so we also have the potential of looking at those turning over again in
Seriously,
Yeah,
6 years. But actually, they had to clean them up to purchase them, right? So,
that's an interesting question. I don't know whether it's,
I
yes.
would say no,
no,
because they did not disturb the land. Everything went in on top and above the land, so that happened to. If they were in their giant crane, ripped up the earth, they would have done that. If anything, they would have capped it, asphalt and just on top of it. I would think anything there that has issues with the waterfront, any issues, in wetlands, anything that has issues with dealing with environmental. There, I mentioned the first one because that was a conversation, part of the conversation that Bruce and I had, which was when you look at this dotted line. And you go, wow, there's a lot of open space. How much of it is usable? Some of it's going to require remediation. One of the other things that we talked about was we don't have a sewer system in town. We're not going to get a sewer system. But they build these self-contained wastewater treatment facilities. We can find a place that's not right for development and put our own system in to deal with that. So there's a lot of things that we can do that would benefit the people that are there now want to stay there. But also, I think it helps being in the room and hearing that, you're meeting on, you're going to meet on Tuesday, bring your checkbooks. You won't be going to those meetings. So I think that's, there's a curiosity of what's really there, what can be used and how it can be used. And again, the environmental is an issue. And again, inland wetlands is an issue. All of those things are the game.
yeah.
And I'll do this right now, because I'm going to do it right now. Here. She's not here, so I do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they have done studies of the brownfield there, so I believe it's all characterized, so it's not like a big unknown. And
Yeah.
it's doable.
Yeah.
It takes money.
Yeah, it takes months, but I was gonna say, as I said, mine is that initiative 4, that vision of a master plan. Because if I go back here, I've got nothing. Again, whether we formalize district or not, we're gonna talk about that. Redevelopment, well, you don't know until what we're doing. Stakeholder involvement, we need that right away. But marketing and all that stuff, same thing, I don't know what that is until we have a plan. So to me, I go here, I create a master vision and master plan. I cross out the guide zoning updates. Because there's a reason why your neighbor of the birds is 100 feet off the road. And that's zoning. So there's a reason why those gas stations are 75 feet off the road, and it's zoning. Again, if people have always talked about, Old Saybrook is it's a town of village charm. Well, village charm in New England had things up on the end of the road.
Yeah.
They had nice buffers though, so your person wasn't going to get hit by a snow truck. So there's greenery, there was walking. Maybe had space for bike riding, those types of things, multimodal. And those are the things that I think we really need to get to with our stakeholders. And that's going to help us. From there, we can pivot and say, you know what? We do need that authority. Because some people may say, I don't need to be here. I can fly my birds on Main Street or whatever, I don't know. Or you know what? I'm related to fishing. I gotta be here. So that type of thing.
Yeah, and it's funny because really, what is their Mariner about Mariner's Way anymore, right? Because all those custom, they're closed.
Yep.
Hello, I mean, look who came in and fixed up a building.
Yep.
And I have men in my store every week still looking for bait in town, but that's it.
And again, they still have the marine business still on,
Yeah, but it,
but there's no marine business other than, it's so limited out there.
Yeah, yeah, great story. Casey, I'm gonna make an assumption that if you have something to add, you'll just either jump in or raise your hand and we can bring you into this.
Okay.
Why don't we, I want to try to keep this as close to an hour as possible, just to get us started, and maybe if we need to have longer for later meetings, we'll do that as well. But let's talk a little bit about what I will put come back to a point that you were making, Tracy, and I think that in a lot of the economic development work that I've done, it has been easier because it's been working with publicly owned property, or in some cases utility owned property. But you had an entity there. This, to me, one of the fascinating things about getting something done in Mariners Way is that it's all privately owned, and privately owned by a large number of people. So it's new to me, and I think it's probably new to all of us. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how we can pull this off. But I think that's,
see, I thought you guys had all the answers.
yeah, you were just going to come in and
You're gonna come back tomorrow.
Okay.
So anyway, so let's talk about meetings. One of the things, because the town is so active with volunteer boards and volunteer commissions, is almost every night from Monday through Thursday, from 6:30 or 7 o'clock to 8 or 9 o'clock, the rooms in this building are utilized. We unfortunately, except for the high school team, we were able to get ourselves here by 5:30. Is 5 to 5:30 in the afternoon, is that possible to meet? Would that be preferable to in the evening? How do people want to, what would be good for a meeting time?
I like the idea of getting it done earlier in general, but like today was a perfect example how I'm like the 7 o'clock meetings, I never have a problem with. They weren't always the most convenient when my kids were little, but now it's fine. So, I mean, and I'm only doing this for 2 months every year. It's like April, May, the team.
Yeah.
So I don't plan on doing year round, so. And today was
So
an
that's
interesting day.
5
So
to
5:30
would work.
5 would be impossible for me, but 5:30 is the earliest I could get.
I can do 5:30 sounds.
Yeah, that's good.
Casey, 5:30, good?
I can make it work most of the time. A little bit later is better for me probably, but I'll make it work.
Casey, I have teenage girls that can babysit.
All right, well, let's start with 5:30. Now let's choose a day of the month this is Tuesday. Does it matter day of the week? Does Tuesday work?
Tuesday's good for me.
Works for me.
So right now, Board of Finance meets on Tuesday, first and third Tuesday. So would we want to kick this off and meet more than once a month? Do we want to try to meet twice a month, see whether there's enough meat to meet around, and then we can cut back to once a month if there's not? What would be people's could you meet for let's say for May and June on the second and fourth Tuesday at 5:30? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think it's critical right now, especially if we're gonna get that group together. Because you need that help with the vision, so I would say you need to put the extra time in right now.
And would they all come here to this building for that meeting?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what would be the most convenient way to do it and what the
And
size
how many
is.
people?
Yeah. I don't think we're gonna need the middle school auditorium for it, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so right now, I'm hearing consensus that for May and June, we'll do the second and fourth Tuesday at 5:30.
I'm good until June 24th because I'm in Las Vegas for a trade show in June.
Okay.
I can't.
Yeah, I understand. And then we'll kind of.
Bruce,
Yep.
I wouldn't be able to do the second Tuesday in June. I have a
Okay.
graduation to go to. So you can do it without me, but I'm just letting you know.
What's the date of the second?
The
Is that
10th?
The second Tuesday.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay, I'm sorry. Second Tuesday, the second.
that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Why don't we keep that schedule and we'll see. Not everybody's gonna make every meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that will at least get us kicked off, and then we can, maybe after a couple meetings, we can then figure out whether that's working, and then we can establish something for going into the fall. And next thing on the agenda is leadership structure. My guess is what we would probably need at this point is a chair, possibly a vice chair, and a secretary. Do most of the boards and commissions have a secretary? A ceremonial role?
Because most people have a clerk.
Yeah,
or
they have
some
one,
staff.
but they don't really do anything. The town
I will probably
clerk
staff.
takes the minutes.
Yeah. All right, well, let's,
Super staff here.
yeah, absolutely.
So we're way beyond the
Yeah,
secretary.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, well, let's, why don't we do a chair and a vice chair? And because everybody is just meeting everybody here, why don't we put as the first agenda item for our meeting in May, election of officers. That way people can, percolate a little bit on who you've met and that kind of. Okay, we're at comments from MWRDC meeting members. So I probably jumped too far ahead on the agenda and we had comments before. Be interested in any comments, and I'll also open it up if any members of the public would also at this point like to make a comment. If you do, either jump in or raise your hand.
So for the public, I'd say more than a few words, but gentleman was talking about things like access. Originally, this had the theme of joining the old trolley power plant building, all the way to, at that time, was Farmers Park, which was new and open, a nice place, and then it kind of creeped a little bit better to Main Street. Access, buildings, bridges, and everything are really not as difficult as you think. Dealing with the state, all bets are off, but I travel the state frequently for my line of work. And one of the things that I think everybody should spend a few minutes, everyone on this commission, go Google and go on Facebook or whatever it is. But a project, the Bolton Greenway that interconnects to Vernon, it starts in Manchester, East Hartford, goes all the way to the Vernon Airline Trail. And they have, I watched for years, what are they building, a road or a highway, and driving down 384 and across 84? And they made a beautiful greenway out of that. Big bridges that go over 84, they go over 384. They go over a lot of other roads and bridges. And last summer, I took my bicycle out and had a day out by myself and went for miles up and down a road. And these were outstanding structures that were, for the public use. And, Airline Trail has been there for 1 million years, and it's kind of all use the word unapproved gravel. Where I work, and for who I work, I go these places frequently, and I see people and more people and more people all the time on these things, baby strollers, joggers, runners, dog walkers, you name it. And if we can get that here in town, I'm all for it. And please spend a few minutes. I don't know, unfortunately, I don't know what the name of it is, but it goes all the way from basically East Hartford all the way. There's bridges, and if you drive on 384, you'll see these. These are not little, you know, pedestrian or full-size bridges and highways, and I was thoroughly impressed. I don't know the architects or the building people or any of the construction companies involved, but I was more than thoroughly impressed. And then when you get a walk where you go into Bolton and Coventry, and then you take a left at that fork when you get out the end of 384 and you get down Route 6. Couple other ones, that bridge continues over a couple of the major roadways and joins up to the airline trail, and really impressive.
Yeah.
And everyone here should spend some time on looking at it. I don't know the history and the details about it, but it can be done. And whether it's Amtrak or the state or somebody whining about it, can be done, it has been done. So.
Okay, great, thanks. Something to look at.
Bruce.
Yeah.
Or everyone, I'm kind of chomping at the bit to, like, you know, see where we're going. And I agree that I think, so I guess I'm just wondering, I agree. I think that sort of like the visioning statement, or like establishing, because there's so many like interesting thoughts and ideas being discussed. And I am wondering sort of how we can funnel that into progress, or like what we do next, sort of. And I'm wondering if there's a way we could, I mean, I'm sure you have lots of thoughts about this already, but I'm wondering if there's a way we could, or if maybe sort of where we go from here is to see if everyone's on the same page about kind of prioritizing the initiatives and what a timeline looks like in terms of starting to implement some of these things. Like, does everyone agree that visioning is, I have found, and sort of in my experience, it's sort of best to start with a vision statement that we all, or some sort of visioning concept that we're all on the same page about, so that that can kind of help us to move forward. And I know in the study they provided, page 47, 46, 47 has that implementation schedule. And it has recommendations for each of the initiatives, short-term, mid-term, long-term. But I think what maybe we as a committee need to do is think about what order kind of we want to do. We want to undertake these initiatives, and then maybe figure out what can run parallel in a timeline like that. But that's sort of what I'm thinking of next, because I know it would help me to kind of focus. I think I need some help focusing, like, okay, where do we go from here? So that's just kind of what I was thinking. And the other thing I was wondering, just based on the conversation, I don't know, Jennifer, if you know this or not, because it came up in EDC too. Uh-oh, I have a crying baby. Come here, sweetheart. Is there a way, has anyone spoken to DEEP, or is there a way, say hi, is there a way to find out exactly what like the brownfield status of the properties is, and whether like a level 1, I'm assuming at least a level 1 analysis has been done, but to what extent, you know, kind of where they stand with DEEP in terms of brownfield status.
I think,
So what we the town had a grant, and but it was, I think the only properties that were looked at were the custom marine properties. So we have information on the custom marine property that is not inside the building, because the people who were doing the work were not allowed inside the building. But we don't put the land there, relative to brownfield rating. So we do have that information, but for the rest of Mariners Way, I don't believe we have that.
Okay.
So, well, good to have. One of the things I was thinking, Casey, based on what you were saying, and maybe to help us, would be reaching out to Chris Costa for our next meeting and taking, maybe pulling right up on this screen here, the GIS map, and being able to overlay the wetlands, being able to overlay the floodplain, all the different elements that we have in the GIS map that would help us kind of begin to narrow down what's possible. And then as we begin to do the visioning part of it, we're visioning something around what's possible versus talking about a piece of property or an area that will simply never be able to get development, something along those lines. So that's probably a good next step for our meeting. And we'll reach out to Chris and see whether she's available the second Tuesday in May. And then she would have the information around the brownfield, any other brownfield work. And there is money available at the state. So the fact that something is brownfield doesn't mean that's the end of the conversation. It just means you've got to then go find somebody to do, help us do the remediate work. Okay. Other ideas? Thoughts?
Got a star.
Yeah. Okay.
Vice Chair.
Right. So Casey, you have to introduce us to who you're all.
This is Audrey. She's my younger one. She just figured out that she can wave at herself in the camera. And she has been doing Zoom meetings with me for her whole life.
She's our ARPA baby.
She is. She's the ARPA baby. Yes, that's right.
Casey was pregnant when ARPA started, and Audrey had arrived by the time ARPA was over. So we're all very proud. Okay, with that and no other comments, we will adjourn and be back here at 5:30 on Tuesday, whatever that date is.
May 13th?
May 13th. Thank you very much.